The main tip is to definitely start using the stiff arm retreat, doing that by holding R1, R2, and moving away from your opponent. You know, it has a lot of great properties to interrupt your opponent's combos and to make your opponent's with like the end of his combo, interrupts his rhythm, and the more he's missing, the better chances you have of winning the fight by lowering the person's stamina. Using more feints, making your opponent think, and using interceptions as well. You know, a great interception punch will be the cross, has a lot of stopping power, and most of the time it could interrupt your opponent's combo or whatever, you know, punch or kick he is queuing up to throw at you moving forward, and it does more damage as well. You know, you're catching him while he's very vulnerable, walking into your punches. See, I just use it right there just to stay out of range. You know, using your smaller subtle strikes like your body jabs, your teeps, you know, just the small strikes in the very beginning. Using round one as the reader round, you know, to really gather your reads, to see what your opponent's throwing from the combos, the setups, and just his rhythm within the fight. Some people like to go with 2 straights and then the last one's a hook, so you know to pull. You know, take the time out to really get those reads in round one while not being too passive. You know, I'm still throwing here and still intercepting him. I'm taking all the opportunities my opponent is giving me for the most part. So I understand this is a very frustrating style to go against, you know, especially for, you know, newer players or just maybe guys from older UFC games, you know, just coming over here to UFC 5. You know, it's very fast paced and it's really hard to punish your opponent because the way the game is, it kind of encourages a lot of boxing. So if you don't have the tools to counter it, you will get beaten pretty easily. Even by people that are probably worse than you. It can definitely happen. Happened to me when I first, you know, got into UFC 5. It was a big pace change from UFC 4. You know, like a 1-2-3 missed was like almost half of your short-term stamina. Now you could throw way more than that. You could throw like 6 pieces and still have more short-term stamina to spare in the beginning of a fight. So it's definitely something to get used to. But making your opponents whiff and tagging their body with smaller strikes, you know, when they whiff, you know, you see how the gray bars right there? When your opponent whiffs, you know, a small combo, a punch or two, or a kick of any kind, and you see all that short-term stamina missing, that's when you really want to hit the body. You know, you could start off with like a punch or two and then kick the body. That lowers their long-term stamina, you know, permanently. You know, that's how you really gas people and get them tired. So those are some great tips right there to definitely kill those pressure fighters and punish them for, you know, being reckless and charging at you. And stamina and damage correlate in this game. So what that means is basically if I have higher stamina, you know, I'm going to do more damage than my opponent. My opponent's going to do less damage because, you know, he has lower stamina. And he also gets hurt a little bit easier compared to me. So winning the stamina battle is very important. And we are already winning by a decent amount, considering it is about to be round 2. Hey, this guy was just kind of annoying, so I was going to try to finish out the fight, see what happens. But as you can see, this is what I mean by the damage system. You know, you could punish him as much as you can. This is why you kind of have to fight the perfect fight, because I was like, this guy literally didn't get knocked out. It's kind of shocking, actually, you know. We defend that, you know, very easily. We're holding low block, and then we turned our left analog stick down because he turned his takedown down. So definitely practice your turning takedown denials, because if people realize you don't know how to stop them or you're not the greatest grappler, they will force it and spam it over and over and over. And also, this is obviously another way. If you're decent with grappling, you know, put him against the fence, clinch him, you know, do whatever you got to do to get him down. You know, pretty sure he'll stop the pressure, or you might even win just by grappling. On to the next one. Taporias, like I like to use Volk, for example. And as far as in the stiff arm retreat, it's just a tool in my toolbox. I'm not going to be using a hammer to do every single job. That's the way I think of it, you know. So, you know, the things I'm telling you, you don't want to spam them or overdo it. You got to find a good balance. That's why I say use quick fight, you know, like I say in my streams all the time. just use them as advanced practice mode, basically. That's what you're going to use quick match as. You know, practice all these things I'm telling you, and you'll have way more success against pressure fighters, I promise you. You know, tagging the body just like that. The level changing combos is a big thing too. You know, don't throw a whole bunch of head strikes or body strikes. You know, you could keep it short and sweet up top, and then, you know, sometimes the second shot you land upstairs, whether it be on the block, it just depends on what strike it is. You could just fire off like a body shot and just constantly switch it up. And maybe the next combo starts to the body, come back up top, like a rear body hook, lead hook to the head. You know, simple things like that. That's all I'm doing. Very basic A to B boxing, you know. Switching the levels, using the body jab. The main weapons I like to use, let's say if I'm moving forward a little bit to try to push him back, you know, push back a pressure fighter. You know, a decent jab, the body jabs, and the lead hook. Those are the strikes you really want to use. The other ones like overhands, kicks, and, you know, rear hooks are going to be a bit easier to counter and see coming. You know, they can catch your opponent off guard, land a nice jab. It could set up another strike. Same thing with the lead hook. You know, lead hooks are usually pretty quick on most fighters that are commonly used. But we got countered right there, throwing a kick in the pocket, improper range. See, we intercepted and took his turn. I finished a combo, and then like when he was walking towards me, trying to throw another combo back, kind of taking his turn, we throw the cross, and we hit stun him and interrupt his combo. We used footwork right there. I saw him throwing that kick from a mile away because he was throwing and moving forward. So we're able to use that 100 footwork. See, we use the stiff arm retreat. Also, we're using the push mechanic as well, which is just like R2 and the clinch button, and he'll do a push. So use that very carefully, I recommend, because you do unfortunately get a lot of vulnerability for pushing your opponent backwards. The reason why I say unfortunately is because, you know, a defensive mechanic will punish you very heavily, right? Like if you push them and they punch you, you take a lot more damage. But them reaching their hand out for a clinch, they don't take any extra damage. And I just feel like that's a bit unfair, but, you know, topic for another day. Hopefully UFC 6 can definitely improve in some of those areas. Right here, I am just going to race this, go to side saddle and race as soon as, you know, he starts going for it. But we still had stamina, so we got it anyways. He didn't really have enough time to play that game for that long, you know, the stamina race. So we're able to survive that. But not relatively super high numbers. We're just effectively intercepting him, countering him, and just doing everything the opponent's given to us, basically. It's really hard to use low kicks, you know, because people are usually moving forward more times than not. Depends on the time of day. Sometimes earlier in the day, you get more wild opponents. You know, at night, you could get some weird play styles, but see, we're using that stiff arm retreat right there, just staying out of range, making him work for that distance a little bit more. Trip him right here. Gonna let him back up. Kick him to the body. See, we're just doing subtle body work. We land that. Those two body kicks right there. The rear roundhouse and the teep. Just working the body slowly but surely. Using knees, even the elbows. Just trying to use all the weapons we can, you know. I'm just trying to utilize using all the tools more. I got to practice this probably like offline when I'm not like concentrating for a stream or something. So I could just start using all these tools in the match. You know, there's a lot of tools we don't utilize. You know, that push mechanic is a great example of another mechanic people don't use. Probably because it's heavily punished, but we're going to back drag him. So when we took that back right there, we moved towards our opponent's back. And as we were pulling him down, we just, you know, rolled our stick down and it'll just do that drag. A little bit hard to explain, you know, definitely look up a tutorial if you need further, you know, instructions on that. But that's a good way to get your opponent down in case they don't have the backpack. But yeah, that's what I was thinking for, you know, upcoming video. Definitely going to do like a grappling type of video where we dominate with some grapplers and, you know, obviously put on some entertaining fights along with, you know, giving out tips about grappling as I play. So entertain and giving tips both at the same time. It's the main thing we like to do on my channel for the most part. Sometimes we do, just fire showcases, but even in those, we definitely give a lot of tips. So, look at that. Nice knees to the body. Yeah, just going to work the body from sprawl. I'm not really rushing. I didn't really care if he got up or not, because I already knew I have an advantage on the feet anyways. I'm winning the stamina battle, and his body's pretty much cooked. Time a nice knee. Yeah, and start clinching him as well. Don't be scared to use that clinch. If they're sticking to you, gluing to you, you literally have no choice. Especially people are using people like Ilya, Conor McGregor. You're going to have to do something. You just stand there, they're going to try to, look for that counter or just get through that block. So, still taking my time. Nice teeps. That's a really good weapon to use to reset the distance, work the body. And that's the end of the round right there. Did really well. Intercepting, working the body. So, and it pretty much just adds on. We're winning rounds. We're landing more. We're throwing more. But we're landing more efficiently. He's whiffing more. So, he's going to get tired. Plus, he's getting hit to the body way more than I am. He doesn't really hit my body too much. Not at all. We almost have full body health. That was a nice head kick counter right there. Jab rear hook. Nice level changing combo. Nice body knee. See, we're just using those weapons. I'm going to start to clinch up a little bit. He's still trying to pressure me. Elbow counter that because we blocked the body shot, so we get a free shot of our choice. For the most part, it's like a block counter in itself. If you block one of those body hooks, you can get off like a free uppercut. That does hella damage. So sometimes I like to use the elbow. Cuts them and further increases the damage done by certain hooks, depending on which side the cut is on. Yeah, look, that he's like running into strikes right now. It's not looking too good for him, and he's still pressuring us. Drop him on another combo right there. We're gonna clinch up again. Just mixing him up on the fence, and that's it. Nice body shot combo gets him out of here. We got another Taporia player. Another one that's probably going to be moving forward and definitely being a bit aggressive. It's to be expected for the most part. When you see we're using that stiff arm retreat to keep that distance. Just trying to stay safe from that Ilya power. That 99 power. 5-star boxing combos. Most of those hooks are 5 stars, so it's just something we got to stay away from. Gotta be very careful getting caught throwing kicks of any kind. I'm stance switching only because I have a very high switch stance with, obviously, Alexander Volkanovski. Don't do this if your fighter of your choice doesn't have good switch stance because, you will lose power and speed, I believe so. Definitely power, just not sure about the speed part, but yeah, definitely don't do that if the stat is low. Use a fighter that fits your stance. So look at that, he throws that moving forward leg kick, he whiffs, and we get a free counter. A free counter punch right there. Yeah, don't be afraid to use those knees, your stiff arm retreat. Just practice it, just like I am. Like in these matches, I'm pretty much just practicing it on actual online players, trying to see when's a good time to do it. Even if it gets me knocked out and everything, that's the point of practicing it in quick fight and not ranked, And then when I start mastering these mechanics, sparring some, high-level friends I do got, and it works well against them, then it'll work very well into ranked. So, definitely use quick match as your training ground and use it for warm-ups. Ducking that head kick right there. We just had a feeling that was coming, so definitely ducked it right there. I didn't think he was going to throw the head kick again. I thought it was going to go to the body, but, he does go crazy. 1, 2, 3. Stiff arm retreat to stay out of range. Just constantly intercepting him and throwing off his rhythm and just not letting him get settled, get comfortable with anything. All of his combos are moving, making it easier to intercept him because his punches are slower than mine because I am planting my feet. Clinch him right there. That's crazy. It let me clinch him out of the knee, but Look at that, just walk away from it, bang, knockout. And just like that, that's how you really destroy a lot of pressure fighters, you know? So